True Detective Season 1 fans, do you want that grisly, ew kind of feeling that you had during the best parts of that series? Well, hear me out for a second. Hear me out. There's a movie that has one of the dumbest names I've ever heard of in my life, but it's also got those True Detective vibes in a horrifying, upsetting way. And it's one of the very best explorations of the male gaze, male objectification of women, and the connection between intimacy and violence and ownership and patriarchy. This is Inflatable Sex Doll of the Wastelands, also known as Dutch Wife of the Wastelands, also known as the Dutch Wives of the Wild, also known as Horror Doll, which are all crazy names, but again, I think this is a feminist masterpiece with like an Andrea Dworkin-esque view of men. We begin on a desolate road watching a guy try and fail to light a cigarette. On the ground is a phone, and then we flash to a woman also on a phone who then gets restrained. This is a technique that we'll be returning to over and over throughout the movie. This is a movie told in flashbacks and daydreams, and it's out of order, so you're never quite sure where you are or if what you're looking at is a dream or a fantasy or a nightmare or a reality. In that way, it's very much like John Borman's Point Blank, or Takeshi Kitano's Hanabi, my personal favorite movie. The guy with the cigarette is Sho, and Naka, this guy with the glasses, pulls up. It turns out Naka's a wealthy real estate guy and wants to hire Sho because some criminals have kidnapped his girlfriend, Sei. And it turns out they periodically call him on the phone while torturing her so that they can hear her voice. And also they send him a tape of what they're doing to her, and it's very much a tape like that tape in True Detective. No one should have this.
You shouldn't have that.
Nobody should have that.
But that's where the movie starts getting really fascinating, even more ugh. Because first, Sho makes a joke about the cinematography of the film, saying it's not filmed well. And that's obviously macabre, but it ties into one of the main themes of the movie, the disposability and objectification of women's bodies on film. As a film itself, it's kind of a self-criticism of the medium of film and the production machine so often behind it and the viewing experience of it. When we watch a film, we're aware on some level of the technique and craft in filmmaking, and our focus becomes, way too often, more on the technique and craft than the content. The content of a piece of video, however hard, is rendered more inert than it should be, even when it's real. No tweet has ever been more evergreen than that tweet made by Darren Ravel writing, quote, "I feel bad for our country, but this is tremendous content." Ravel was, of course, referring to the 2016 presidential election, and that statement has been permanently and awfully true every moment since he tweeted it. And I don't think it's purely coincidental that the defining piece of video during the Trump era is his infamous reaction to Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying. And I'm like most everyone else. I'm in awe of how utterly cinematic the whole thing was, with Trump walking up and having a fake reaction on so many levels timed perfectly with Tiny Dancer. But also that moment was what sealed the loss of Roe v. Wade, and therefore a massive increase to the disposability and objectification of women's bodies in American society. I can't help but be transfixed by it as a piece of video, and I can't help but feel bad that that transfixion is even in the same place as the utter revulsion at what that moment pretended in reality. In this movie, that point is hammered home even further as we find out that Naka has been obsessed with watching this film, viewing it hundreds of times in the 6 months he's had it. He's even in it, having been tied up and forced to watch during the acts. But even more because as we watch it, we see Naka yelling at Sei to bite her tongue and try and die for him. Not only is he participating in voyeurism and objectification and obsession, he's also engaging a kind of twisted desire of ownership of her too, even at her dying moments. Which is somehow even further as we pan and see another man watching the film in a kind of horrified delirium. This is Sei's father, who is similarly obsessed and by turns horrified and ecstatic. Naka yells at him to shut up, then a mysterious doctor comes in to give him an injection, which makes him even more delirious. And then, a moment later, the characters see him playing with his own sex doll, one that sings but not well, that he's clearly worn out and been obsessed with. As utterly grotesque as that entire sequence is, it's utterly genius in my mind, as is the whole movie, for exploring how patriarchy leads to objectification and control and exploitation, stripping away even the most basic and human of family relations. It doesn't really matter if he's her dad or not, or if Naka's her partner or not. Merely their passive assent of gender relations in the country renders them on some level complicit, this movie just extending that psychology to its dark conclusion. Ironically, the title ends up being silly in expression but not in content, as we eventually get to the very best shot of the movie and the one that'll haunt me for ages. There's a transition from human legs to plaster to finally a porcelain head. Which is then reinforced as we see a brothel that a character says is a major tourist attraction with all dolls, but they turn out to be just women drugged up to be static. Which is the real awful point of this all. When you commodify women in a system like this, is there even a difference? And how many men even truly care?